Okay, we're gonna get started again with our next panel, talking all about why interoperability matters now. Good afternoon, I'm Jennifer Kent, SVP and Principal Analyst with Parks Associates. Another big thank you to our sponsors. We couldn't be putting on our 20th annual Connections Summit without you, so thank you so much for your support. One thing I wanted to share in setting up the really critical nature of this conversation for not just that core smart home, but really the connected home ecosystem and everybody playing in this space, is some research that we did with IoT, consumer IoT businesses in 2025. So we surveyed many of the leaders in the space, probably many of you answered this, so thank you if you did, and asked what drives user engagement with your connected devices. Ease of use, right at the top, and then after that, so much of it is about integrating with other devices in the home, integrating with leading platforms, being able to set routines, being able to integrate with voice assistants, and all of that really drives user engagement with the devices and the solutions that you're putting out there. And to be able to do that, things need to work together. We also asked, around Matter specifically, that we're going to be talking about a variety of different approaches to interoperability and to working as part of an ecosystem. What are your strategies as a business related to Matter specifically? And at that time, it was about April of last year, 59% of these executives responded that they either already had products on market supporting Matter or were developing products. You know, we have Aqara on the stage today who has announced themselves, you know, some support for Matter. And then, you know, some holdouts, especially waiting for Matter to support a specific product category, video being one of those at the time that was not supported and now is. So we're going to hear a lot about the progress from some of these different approaches today. Also thinking about, as a business, how you approach local versus cloud interoperability, and also when things work together and you get kind of out of the way some of the basics of smart home integration, what then are you opening the door to that's new services, new experiences. So with that, I'm very excited to introduce our great panelists today and ask each of them to introduce themselves and their organizations and tell us a little bit about how you fit into this ecosystem, starting with John Harros, the head of certification and testing programs of the Connectivity Standards Alliance. Hi, John.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for having me here. So, yeah, my background, I've been involved in homologation, regulatory certifications for probably close to 30 years now, lots of experience specifically specializing in communications. Advanced robotics was actually my original field. And being involved with Alliance technologies now for a good 20 odd years, and being a part of the staff at the Connectivity Standards Alliance now for about 6.5 years. And I head up the certification and testing programs at the Alliance. So anyone who, Aqara recently obtains a Matter certification, they receive a nice certificate with my signature on the bottom. So.
It's hard work.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Lots of signs, that hand getting tired, you know.
It's very tired. That's why I originated in robotics, you see. So.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, and also we released a white paper earlier this year talking about smart home evolution, unlocking value with the Connectivity Standards Alliance, that's complementary to read and access. We also have Yoon Choi, who's the president of the Home Connectivity Alliance, as well as global head of partnership and Alliance Digital Appliance Customer Experience Team with Samsung Electronics. Yoon, tell us a little bit about yourself and Home Connectivity Alliance.
I am very honored and happy to be here. I think I am the president of Home Connectivity Alliance, which is an alliance that's dedicated to long life devices. And what that means is it's the refrigerators, the washers, the devices, HVAC, devices that are in your home for decades. So we specifically focus on the IoT elements of those devices category. At Samsung, I am head of the strategic alliances. So like Home Connectivity Alliance or Matter or other consortiums or alliances. I work with these groups to do it. I think for us, the focus is very specifically and unique to the long life products because those devices have actually a unique set of criteria. So we try to focus on making sure your washers, and it's maybe sometimes not the sexiest product, but it's products that you need and we need every day, right? So we focus on making those part of the digital ecosystem.
Yeah, and certain, maybe not sexy, but those utility products are the ones that consumers miss most when they don't work and they don't run, and very.
Absolutely. I always say, wait until your washer breaks down. You've got like a whole different kind of set of problems, right? So,
Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you for being here. We also have Paulus Schoutsen, who's the president of the Open Home Foundation.
Yeah, so I'm Paulus Schoutsen. We are building Home Assistant. Home Assistant is an open source platform that gives users choice and control over the smart home, their data, and their well-being. And so the platform is built by like a passionate group, global group of developers. Last year, we had like 21,000 people contributed. And they're constantly working on like evolving the platform and making it better. And we make sure that all your data always stays locally, and privacy is very important for us. And with that, we make sure that with Home Assistant, we have a very simple, powerful, but also sustainable solution for your smart home, for now and for in the future. And the way we guarantee that in the future everything keeps working is that Home Assistant is owned by the Open Home Foundation. And the Open Home Foundation is a non-profit based in Switzerland. And that means that there are no investors, nobody can buy Home Assistant, and we'll always be bound by our mission to build a smart home for privacy, choice, and sustainability. And that's why I'm also very excited to be on this panel, because interoperability is a key to longevity in the smart home.
Fantastic, thank you for being here. And also Cathy Yu, who's the Senior Vice President, Head of Global Division with Aqara.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. Aqara, we're basically the only, I guess, device manufacturer here sitting here in the panel, but we're also a huge proponent of interoperability. Our job really is to make a comprehensive line of smart home products, from sensors, controllers, door locks, sometimes sexy, sometimes maybe not so sexy as well. But I think our goal is to really build foundational building blocks for smart home experience. Sensors that can detect your movements, and then I think that's why having interoperability is so important, because then we can partner with companies like Samsung, our sensors with their appliances, or being able to partner with a Home Assistant, making sure our products work across different ecosystems. So that's why we're also here on the panel to really advocate for interoperability.
Okay, fantastic. So a lot of unique viewpoints here too on the panel, which I really appreciate. And I want to start off with, this is an evergreen conversation. We've been talking about interoperability for 40 years at Parks Associates, and it always means something a little bit different every year. And there's been a lot of progress made, both for the CSA and for the HCA, and also Open Home Foundation. We were just talking about that. So I'd love to just go through a quick update of what's new, because there's a lot that's changed from last year. So John, love to start with you. Tell us about some of the enhancements that the CSA made and some of the big news.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. So, to begin with, I'm just going to say this the first time, Connectivity Standards Alliance, that's what we're called, refer to ourselves as CSA. And I'm now going to keep saying CSA because it's a lot easier to say. So obviously, we are the organization that is behind technologies like Zigbee, but importantly, Matter's one of the big ones that's really been taking a lot of news this year. Zigbee as well, Zigbee 4.0 was launched this year, but Matter's had a number of iterations this year. We've really been focusing on quality and rounding out that list of device types that the markets have been asking for, users have been asking for. And with Matter, it's all about that interoperability that you've talked about, not just between device makers, but also trying to, the idea originally was to ensure that ecosystems were available to all users of devices, so device makers could choose which ecosystem they were going to work with. And in particular, one of the areas that has really taken off in this year is, most of you will know that those ecosystems have their own works with programs, works with Apple Home, works with Google, works with Alexa, etc. And one of the big news items at CSA last year was, I think just the first one or two were beginning to accept the interoperability results that we were getting off the back of Matter within the Alliance for our certified devices. And now that has just expanded and expanded and expanded. So it really is bringing together all of that true interoperability that is what users are expecting from these devices. We have obviously been focusing a lot on quality, robustness of the technology. We've made a lot of strides in that. That's why there have been a number of iterations of the standard. But as well as that, we've also introduced, as I mentioned, those new device types. An important one is cameras, obviously in Matter 1.5 that launched in the last year. We're also introducing things like energy management and monitoring and outdoor irrigation, those kind of things as well. Extra devices. Still a little bit more to come, but we've really made sure that we're focusing on those big device types that people are really wanting to talk about. Possibly might be referred to as the sexy device types.
Yeah.
So.
Well, a couple of things to follow up with there. So on the Works With program, I mean, the big thing here is it's really streamlining for device manufacturers, right? So if you are certifying for interoperability through Matter, now you've got a streamlined process for the Works With programs.
Correct, absolutely. And I mean, so as I mentioned, there were a couple of announcements at CES last year, but now a lot of the Works With programs are accepting the interoperability results directly from the Alliance, meaning that you don't need to do anything further from a testing perspective. Your devices then, I don't want to speak for them because they're their own programs, but you would expect it to be more of a paperwork exercise to simply apply for their additional badges that you might want to still have on your devices because they're still recognizable. But all the test work is the same. It's a single run. It's happening at the Alliance.
Okay, great. Let's talk about on the video and energy side as well. But I'd love to come to Cathy next as a manufacturer who has, publicly announced a full suite of devices that are Matter supporting, and I think coming in 2026, the Matter supporting camera. Tell us about how you're thinking about interoperability as a brand as part of your strategy.
That's right. Thank you for that. I think for us, we right now are going on a couple of different approaches. As with all protocols, it definitely takes time to mature and develop. And so for us, I think before the arrival of Matter, our goal is to not only build out our complete portfolio, but also participate in the Work With programs. As John was mentioning, with all the major ecosystems out there. But when Matter came in, we were very excited because it means that eventually we're hoping everyone can converge into Matter. So we don't have to work in a lot of with different integrations. So for us, I think right now is number one, our first, all of our new announcements, as you'll see, will be Matter certified. So for example, our latest UWB door lock, our Matter-enabled camera with the Matter 1.5. And so all of that will be completely native Matter. You don't need our hub, you can plug directly into a third-party ecosystem. And I think the second part is that not only will they be Matter-enabled, we'll still maintain that Zigbee capability. So a lot of these products will also have dual protocol. So that means for users who want that flexibility, they can either take our products to a third-party platform, or if they enjoy maybe some certain features that are currently unavailable in other platforms, they can still stick with Zigbee within Aqara home. But we also are working on things like advanced Matter bridging, right? These are capabilities that allow you to automate advanced features within our ecosystem, but then use that automation, expose it to a third-party platform. So this is kind of our way to really bridge the interoperability, some of the current gap that we're seeing. But and then finally, for us, we really hope eventually we can all converge, to just one standard, so that our efforts can be focused really more on, just product innovation, right? So, but we are really happy of all the progress that's been made so far with Matter, and we're really excited to showcase all these new products this year in CES.
Let me follow up on one product category in particular. Video, from our perspective, does change the game. Having Matter support for video is one of those areas that in the smart home has the proven ability to be a foundation for services. It's hard to attach services to a light sometimes, people have tried, right? Or a plug, or, you know, and so, but for video, of course, you've got storage, you've got self-monitoring, you've got professional monitoring that you can attach. And so brands are rightly sometimes protective of that, you know, asset, the video. How do you think about how you continue to differentiate with cameras and where that kind of services play goes when you're giving consumers the choice, right, to actually control that camera with a different control ecosystem?
Sure. I think for us, first and foremost, we want to make sure users have the best experience. So, you know, we first of all want to open our cameras up to Matter, to as many platforms as possible, because we want to see more people use our products. So first and foremost, we're kind of thinking more in terms of a device manufacturer. And of course, on top of that, we'll have AI capabilities, facial recognition, gesture recognition. Our latest product, G350, which is a Matter camera, for example, you can have gesture recognition on the camera itself, turn on different lights with a thumbs up, right? So these are things that we're obviously baking into our hardware. But I think what differentiates really for us is, number one, our ability to really bridge our product to Matter. So, what that means is we're, one of the fastest company to kind of make our products Matter capable. As you can see, we released the Matter camera. We're releasing it in Q1 this year. And then two, we have a lot of bridges, right? A lot of hubs that acts as a Matter bridge. And I think what's interesting here too is with our M4110, it's a home base, and that acts not only as a storage for us, for the camera user, but also a Matter bridge. So all of our previous Aqara cameras that were non-Matter compatible can now be Matter compatible. So I think that's also one of the first in the market, and this is where we really see the differentiation, is how do we help users get to a point of interoperability with their devices. And I think finally for us, we are really not thinking about it in terms of specific product, but how our portfolio work with one another. So I think a key differentiator for us is, because we have so many different product categories, how do we create these seamless experiences with users? Take for example our latest announcement with our UWB door lock, our doorbell, and our thermostat, our first thermostat in the US. Users could potentially sit, let's say, on the second floor of your home. Your friend can bring a doorbell, and you can see exactly who it is outside at their doorsteps. And with the one click of a button on your thermostat, you can let your friend in. Right? So these are type of kind of experiences that we hope to create for our users that I think are very unique to specifically our brand.
Okay. Thank you for unpacking all of that for us. I'd love to get an update on what's happening with the HCA, also announcing all sorts of things throughout the year. You guys are moving very quickly. So what's the latest, and what should we be aware of that the HCA has released this year?
Thank you. I think for HCA, the focus remains the same, and our focus is fairly narrow, and as I mentioned before, it's on the long life products. So the longevity of making sure that everything that we do in terms of specification, all the collaboration, we want to make sure that the devices in your home, not only the new devices, but the connected appliances that are already in your home, that we make sure that the legacy products are also on the journey, right? So we focus on this as a baseline, but I think the new things that we're focusing on, and we just released our home insurance specification, and of course we've had our energy specification. I think what we're trying to do is all of what work we are doing, we are trying to match this to a benefit and an outcome for the consumer. And we really focus on three areas, right? First is, how do we save the consumers money, right? So from all of this interoperability, from all of this connection, it has to lead to an outcome that has a tangible and a measurable outcome And we start with money savings, right? So I'll talk a little bit more about this. So money savings, energy savings, and effort savings. So we focus on these three things. The reason why the insurance specification was released was very similar to the energy specification, which of course deals with everything from demand response to time of use. We have very light specification that allows these manufacturers to plug into various utility programs to save money. What we realize is working with the home insurance industry, we realize that a lot of what we do, the non-personal data, can in fact be inputs that help the entire insurance industry look at this from a predict and prevent, connect to prevent, this type of a scenario, right? So we do that to then translate that to, if you have a connected appliance, that translates to savings in home insurance, right? And so that's savings year over year, and it's different by insurance carrier and of course, the insurance rate of your home, but it's significant. It's hundreds of dollars every year in savings. So we kind of squarely focus on kind of what can we do with our large devices, the non-personal data from those devices, and how can we work with cross sectors, right? So entire industries like insurance or energy, home security, of course. How can we work with those ecosystems that are also part of the home to save consumers money? So it's, again, a very narrow focus, but I think by doing so, we can lead to outcomes that are actually beneficial. So this is what we are focusing on.
And why was it important to do that kind of as an industry? So for instance, Samsung could go and work with insurance companies and see
Sure.
it as a competitive partnership that you've decided to roll out, but instead you're working with some of the biggest competitors in the appliance space coming together,
That's
right. to make some of these decisions together as an industry. Why was it important to take that approach?
I think it's, I'm always thankful to the work that John and the CSA and Matter does, because they're helping to bridge all of these multi-brands in the home. HCA does that for the large appliances. Mm-hmm. No home is completely owned by a single brand. I know some of our members would like it to be, but it is not the case. And even my home, I have a lot of the competitor products in our home. So when you think of this, and you don't go out and buy all of your appliance all at once. Oftentimes you replace like your washer and dryer, and then at a different time you're going to get a refrigerator, an oven might come in. So when you consider this, a home is multi-branded. When you work with other sectors like energy or insurance or home security, the scale matters, right? So when you have more devices that actually work together, and you're able to actually access some of that information together, I think it helps to scale. Interoperability is key, and that's why I think oftentimes I think people just say like, is HCA trying to compete with Matter? In fact, we appreciate, and not only appreciate, we often celebrate and appreciate what Matter does, and I know that John's work is helping us to kind of go in the same direction. Mm-hmm. We just think that we are in different swim lanes because our category has specific requirements, the long life cycle.
Right. Okay, thank you. Now, Paulus, I want to make sure that we talk about the role of, an open source approach. Is what you're doing at Open Home Foundation accelerating interoperability? I mean, you mentioned in your kind of opening that it's really core to the innovation that a lot of your developers are working on. Tell us about the role of open source and how you're thinking about these other industry efforts and what that means for your...
Yeah, so for us, we want to make sure that every device in your house keeps working, right? Like throwing a device out because a manufacturer goes out of business is unacceptable, right? And so things like Matter are great, they work fully local, a company doesn't have to exist anymore, you can scan a QR code, it gets set up. We see actually, the longevity is also good. We see this with today, there's all these old thermostats in houses that are not connected. Do we then want people to replace them all? Maybe, are there other ways how we can pull this data in with sensors, etc.? And so we want to see these standards flourish, and where open source comes in is that we have open source implementations of all these standards, right? Z-Wave, Zigbee, Matter, Google has an open thread border router, right? So there's all these open source things you can pick up today, like you want to make a Z-Wave hub or a Matter hub, you can just pick up that software and go with it. And the way open source helps a lot here is that people get a lot more experience and exposure to how the internals of these systems work, right? And there's a lot of example code out there. If you want to, like, if you're building a Z-Wave hub, even if you don't use our code, but you run into an issue, you can actually see, oh, how did they solve this in the Open Home Foundation? And there's also actually a lot of experimentation. We see this with Matter because it works over Wi-Fi. There's just all these tinkerers building tiny devices, pushing Matter to the limits, finding bugs because they do things that normal manufacturers wouldn't do, but that's great because now we find the edges of where we need better specification. And so overall, I think open source is a great pusher of like adoption. And I think we look at, for example, Matter. When Matter was announced, the SDK of Matter is fully open source, which was a first for a smart home standard, right? So there is a single SDK that now you can buy chips, you're building a Matter device. All those chip manufacturers have the SDK just pre-installed, they have pre-certified. Like, it's very easy to build devices, way easier than it was before. And I think that is just a modernization, and I like to see more and more, of course, be open source. I think the way I see the industry is that we should never compete on who can best control a light bulb, right? Like, we should innovate on features we build on top, like the gesture control on the camera or something, right? Not on like, how do we get the camera data from A to B? And so, yeah, open source really helps to level the playing field and just rise, you know, rising tide, rise all boats. And then on top of it, we can all like build cool stuff.
So you talked about how the open source developers can really push the boundaries of things, and we were just talking before we came up here that I'd love to unpack a little is, of course, the next step in this evolution of smart home is the integration of more and more AI, and also perhaps where do the LLMs and agentic AI fit in. And so sometimes the developers in the open source world are the first ones toying around with connecting things, right? Tell us a little bit about like where you're pushing on the edges kind of today, where you're seeing that happen. Then I'd love to maybe get John and Yoon to talk a little bit about how interoperability maybe how you're thinking about it in a new world of agents that are data hungry and are looking for maybe some of what's being exposed through the standards.
Yeah. Yeah, so the way in the Home Assistant, we believe in choice, right? So we will never say, this is your AI provider, you have to buy this one and use this one. And so we integrate with OpenAI and Anthropic and ChatGPT and, or in Google, sorry. And you can pick one, and so what we do is that we build like basically an abstraction layer, and people can pick any AI, and then we give them tools. So of course we have voice assistant, people can talk to voice, people can add their own devices, add their own scripts exposed to voice, and people are doing weird things like make kind of games like that for their kids or track chores, and they can do that because AI can easier wrap around like your personal programs, and it doesn't always have to be predefined in voice anymore. But I think where the AI really shines right now is that we give it as a kind of a raw construct to our community inside the automations. And so automations is really good because you can take a picture of a camera. And for example, one of my friends has an automation. It starts raining. He looks at the picture of the camera. Are my clothes hanging outside to dry? Yes. Send me a push notification. You got to bring in your clothes. There's people that monitor the chicken coops. So they count the number of chickens, and if all the chickens are inside at evening, they will lock the door, right? So that they don't escape during the night. Well, these are things that they were possible before AI, but they're so easy to achieve now. And this is where we really see just the community that works with Home Assistant just to experiment so much and really like, yeah, see what's possible.
Yeah, what you just described is great because it's a perfect picture of how every household's unique and the way your household patterns and the things that you may or may not have, like a chicken coop, right? Yes. Or how you're drying your clothes. And so everybody working in smart homes trying to figure out what are the most common use cases, but then through an AI lens, you think actually more through personalized use cases. Yeah. Right. So John, I'll come to you, and then if you could talk a little bit about how you see the interoperability standards that you're working on now being kind of a foundation or maybe a vulnerability or, to the next kind of AI stage?
Well, I think one of the key things is the way we're progressing with interoperability. What it's allowing is a lot more freedom, a lot more flexibility, more options for users, for developers, for product manufacturers, ecosystems, etc. And so the thing about AI at the moment is, if there are so many different ways of using it, and no one yet is, saying this is the absolute way you have to use AI. And so, in an environment of the type that we are creating by having this interoperability of standards, with having systems like, the SDKs that, as thank you, Paulus, for mentioning earlier on that we were the first standards organization to provide an open source SDK. It really allows a user then to play with AI and see what can they do. We have code over here. I have my imagination of things I might be able to do, and I've got AI here that is a tool and could be applied in so many different ways. So I think what it's doing is it's creating an environment and a catalyst where, in my mind, it can only accelerate the progress, and that's an ideal thing that we're looking for. So.
Okay. Anything to add there?
I think I almost feel a little bashful talking more about AI because it's been so talked about, and I think what Paulus and John already said covers a lot.
Yeah.
But I think the way we approach it is, very practically, how is AI, smart home, is actually contributing to kind of my benefit, my savings, right? So if you have to actually work harder to make AI happen, or if you notice it, it's kind of actually not doing its job, right? Mm-hmm. So the way we figure it is that I asked this question to myself. I said, is AI actually saving me money? Of course I can say, yeah, time is money, therefore it's saving me something, but the amount of subscriptions that I pay for AI, I'm actually spending money at this point. There's going to be a point where that's going to actually return that and a lot more. So we are sort of working towards a very practical approach this way. So we're saying, well, through the devices, through interoperability, through information from the device, how can we approach this in a safe way to actually make that happen? I think because our devices are, once it goes in your home, it's going to be there for 10 years or more, right? So I think from our industry, we approach it very conservatively. We feel that we should be more conservative and more careful, walk it very carefully, as it relates to privacy, transparency, clarity of consent. Sometimes you have consents, but it's so buried deep down that it's like it's meaningless, right? So we approach it from that perspective to say, once we earn the trust to have these devices in your home, we'd like to be there. And trust for us is everything, right? Because you buy a refrigerator from us and it's in 10 years, we hope you buy another one, right? So when we approach it this way, and we think the utility of it, I think that's how we approach it, and we focus on how can it actually be measurable in terms of savings and what it gives back to our consumers.
Okay, fantastic. Cathy, just if you have any last thoughts there, and then I do want to go back to Yoon and talk a little bit more about energy, because this is a big conversation really on the data center side and some of the issues it's putting on the grid and where smart home can really play a role in energy management. But Cathy, as Aqara thinks about its own kind of video analytics future, intelligence future, whether that should live in the device or in the cloud, and where Matter can kind of help you think through those strategies. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of what Aqara has on its roadmap there?
Yeah, sure. Our long-term goal is to really try to move as much as we can to the device itself. I think that adds a lot of benefits to the users in terms of low latency, better privacy, more reliability. If the Wi-Fi goes down, local automation still works. But obviously at this point, there's still some things that will still sit on the cloud. Things that require, like LLMs, VLMs, things like that, video analysis, that will still sit on the cloud. And we do have specific subscriptions or services on top of that. But I think what we've done in the last 2 years is that, starting with the announcement of M3, our hub, we moved a lot of automations that were previously on the cloud to the edge, to our hubs. A lot of our sensitive data are now stored on the hub inside a person's home rather than on the cloud. And I think that actually had a really positive reception for our users. And now this year we're taking it a step further and introducing direct binding capabilities with Matter, right? So with our W100 climate sensor, you can directly bind that to another Matter device without the hub. Again, that's one-to-one connection gives us a little more security and reliability there. And then on top of that, anything sensitive like user's fingerprint data on our door locks or facial recognition data on our cameras, those are all stored and done on device. So that's really our goal, is eventually, hopefully, as much as we can, we'll move it on device. I think that's really where the industry's going, and we really hope to get there. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So we have a couple of minutes left, and I did just want to tackle energy sharing in particular, because both the HCA and the CSA, have made kind of progress there, and it's something that we heard all year last year. A lot of concern about the pressure on the grid. Everyone thought it was going to come from EVs, but it's actually data centers and hyperscalers, putting a lot of pressure on the grid and looking for, how. Where there can be curtailment and residents can help with that when it comes to demand response programs and virtual power plant programs. And so now we're at the point where, okay, we've got these standards that can unlock at least energy consumption and energy usage and kind of share that with different parties. When do consumers realistically get to see the benefit of being able to access some more of this advanced home energy management controls? So the building blocks are just starting to be there, right? But I think we still haven't seen a lot of it actually in consumers' hands yet, or really utilities making a whole lot of use of it beyond kind of very distinct demand response programs. So looking for a more coordinated energy future. If you can give us a look into when that's coming, and then John, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, maybe I can just say a quick word on that. So I think one of the challenges in the energy market is that not all regions are the same. Yeah. So in some regions, energy is very much determined by the user. In other regions, it is the utilities, and in other regions, it's governmental legislation that is limiting what users and utilities can do. To that end, I know at the CSA we're doing a lot of work in a lot of different regions. Japan is one of the new regions where we are really looking into this and talking to our members. It's our members that are actually moving us forward in this area, and energy is one of those key areas that there's a lot of movement on. So this is an area of focus for us for sure in the upcoming year. So not a definitive answer, but a primer, I would say. So.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. How I describe it is the connectivity is there, but the cohesiveness to work with energy industry is still very fragmented, right? Even looking across the United States, we've got lots of different sort of maturity levels in terms of the ability to sort of take on digital, the ability to do demand response. So there's aggregators in some regions, sometimes it's the utilities doing that themselves. So very sort of different levels of maturity in terms of digital. There's lots of different programs available. So for consumers, it's not an easy one-stop shop. But I think that's also reflective of how large the market is, right? One thing for certain is that, and by every research or every investigation we do, one thing for 100% certain is that demand is just going to continue to rise. And it's going to continue to rise dramatically. So there is a need for us to do this. I think I don't think there's one magic sort of one thing to cover it all, but we have to kind of tackle it, step by step. As John mentioned, for example, in Europe with the European Code of Conduct for Energy Smart Appliances, sometimes on a continent level, there's efforts like this, which we support. And it's a challenging thing, but it's very brings cohesiveness, right? So we anticipate that there will be more things like this. And we are working directly with legislators and with the industry to try to figure out how we support this. It is not a short-term problem, but it's a problem that is coming very quickly, and therefore we need to do something, right? So the largest, energy load devices in the home, of course, is one of the devices in our portfolio, which is the HVAC, right? So HVAC and all of the devices. I mean, think about your refrigerator. Once you bring it home and plug it in, you are never unplugging that until you get a new refrigerator, right? So our devices are heavy in terms of energy, so it's a very core focus for us. But everything, all the state, region, legislation, and those things are active. The conversations are active, but I anticipate that throughout the next couple of years, there will be a lot of movement to bring more cohesion so that we can actually manage it.
Okay, fantastic. So I know we're just about out of time here, so I want to wrap with the very last question that broadens our view a little bit from directly the players that are working in the home and perhaps working better together with interoperability standards and sharing data to the other players around the home ecosystem that can be brought in now because there is more interoperability and sharing. So we talked about energy players, we talked about insurers a little bit, there's builders, right? There's internet service providers, other types of players around the home. So I'd love to just kind of go down the row and get your thoughts on where you see kind of interoperability or an open standards approach, really inviting other players around the ecosystem to play in a more major way. So just a quick kind of down the row, who kind of is interesting to you, Paulus?
Oh, for me right now, it's like just getting the energy management is actually the thing I would like to see most, because those are the biggest users that drive the bills, right? Like monthly bills, it's like energy usage, electricity usage, and so being able to get that all in one place will be great. And I think, I look forward to the whole world adopting this Matter standard for energy, but like by the time everybody's gonna replace all their things, it will take a while, right? So I'm actually we're spending a lot of time on Modbus right now. It's like, hey, that's a very old school standard, but all these devices have it, and how do we get all that data together and really unlock that for people?
Okay, great. Cathy, how about from your perspective?
Yeah, for us is moving to B2B, there's a lot of commercial space. Commercial buildings utilize actually a lot of energy, right? So for us is, building the bridge again between old legacy systems, KNX, BACnet, Modbus. How do we build that and invite them into the Matter platform, the wireless solutions, and combining that with our consumer type of products. So going to the office building and with a flicker of gesture, your lights turns on, right? So these are obviously something that takes a long time to build, but that is where we're thinking could be a big opportunity.
Okay, fantastic.
I think energy, home security, insurance, these have been mentioned. So I'll use this opportunity to provide maybe like a wish list for me.
Okay.
When you think about the different ecosystems in the home, one of the largest one is the food ecosystem. I would love to be able to figure out how to connect with that through interoperability, make that more efficient, reduce food waste, which is huge. So that's a wish. I don't know how to do it yet, but we are trying to figure that out.
I love it. Okay, John, last note from you.
Okay, no problem. Let's thinking very specifically in the Alliance. This year we're going to be launching Aqara. This is all about access control. It's a really interesting thing to be looking out for. It's coming very soon. I think that combined with things like Matter and other initiatives that we do have going on in the Alliance does mean that there some of the sectors that we are also, our members are looking at, we're looking at things like commercial buildings, multi-dwelling homes, etc. Those are areas that are not so much DIY as professional installations of smart devices, smart sensors, where you're getting thousands of smart items, connected devices being installed all at the same time into a single building, and then controlling the access to various sectors of that. So I think that's an interesting area that's coming very soon.
Absolutely. Pro installers definitely value the ease of interoperability and ease of install as well. So great comments. Please join me in thanking our panelists today for their insights.